Right, okay. Thanks everyone. Based on the curry that Spacko's been getting so far, I highly doubt that everyone's going to go easy on me, but anyway. So my talk's going to be, the one I present, I put together, is going to be on sustainable weed control in cotton. Cowboy's already sort of touched on this, but yeah, this is just something to add to that, I guess. So just a bit of background. Roundup Ready technology obviously came in the early 2000s, well before I actually joined the industry. And 99% of the cotton grown in Australia is Roundup Ready technology. Now, just to put that into perspective, and to put the rest of the talk into perspective, Bollgard cotton, so the insecticide-resistant cotton, is only 96 or 97% of the industry. And to put probably everything else that I'm going to talk about into perspective is that the Bollgard cotton RMP, or resistance management plan, we've got 3 genes in Bollgard. We've got set timelines to put our refuges in. Down south you've got a pupae bust. Up here we've got trap crop requirements. We've got timings for all of those things to be planted, etc, etc. When it comes to Roundup, I'll just add that those 3 genes are fairly specific to cotton production. When it comes to Roundup, we've got timings and a set number of applications and a set kilograms per active that we can put out, and post-spray auditing that needs to be completed, but that's as far as it goes. And this is a product that's used all over the industry, and you look at those 2 resistant management plans, and to me personally, I feel that's somewhat out of balance. So just to keep that into perspective, and as I said, 6 kilos of Roundup Ready can be applied in crop per season. So to bring that back to a 450 gly, that's effectively 9 litres a hectare, or just above, in a 5-6 month window. So just to set the scene. So firstly, this slide is a bit of, it's a bit busy, but I'll explain it in a second. And I'd just like to acknowledge Sue Mass from CRDC, who's compiled this in conjunction with the CCA. I'll give ourselves a little bit of a plug here, but our crop consultants annual survey, we conduct a survey with all our consultants and put together some of this information. So with this survey, and I'm a little bit intimidated now, Sue's in the room, but with this graph I should say, the yellow line is probably the key line to look at, and that's basically all the non-residual herbicide use in the Australian cotton system, according to this survey, since 1994 to 2018. The green line is the total grams active of all products, and the blue line is the residual line. So as you can see, there's a sweet spot around about 2005, 2006 where those lines intersected, and the residuals dropped away significantly. Now there are certainly some growers that still do use residuals in their systems, but you can see as a trend it's declining. And this is just the percentage of Group M herbicide in the cotton industry. So again, it's the same, similar trend. Very low percentages in the late 90s, or mid to late 90s, right through until, that sort of 2011, 12, where we're getting up to that 80% usage year in, year out. So if you think about that, when you're putting 9 litres a hectare of gly on potentially on a crop in a 5-month period, and 80% of the product is Group M of all the herbicide that's going on, it's a huge selection event. So why is Roundup Ready so popular? I'm just looking quickly around the room to see whether anyone that I've bashed heads with residuals is here. But it's quick and easy. It's very simple for a grower to ring up the aerial operator or a ground rig contractor and go, let's put out 1.5 kilos of Roundup Ready, and the job's done in 2 hours. Do 400 hectares in a couple of hours. It's mostly effective at this stage. Again, as Cowboy Ray mentioned in his conversation, like we don't have things like Palmer Amaranth, so it hasn't come and bit us as hard as what it can, but that can change and is changing. there's a license fee to grow Roundup Ready technology. So as humans, I think if we pay for something, we want to use it. So that's a bit of a stumbling block. And residuals in every instance, but in particular in conversations when it comes to cotton production, they can and tend to impact the establishment if conditions don't go our way. The only thing to add to that is that recently I was invited to a meeting with a company that's not here actually, but Adama, and they're going through a process of reviewing all of their products that are registered in cotton as a residual to assess the issue of the impact of the herbicide as the cotton's germinating. So just to see whether the newer varieties are less or more susceptible to herbicide damage, which I think is stuff that hasn't been done. Any chemical company can debate that with me, but yeah, it's stuff that hasn't been done of recent because the market hasn't demanded it. So there's a lot of challenges that come with this, and again, this doesn't apply to all growers, but it is something that is a bit of a change in practice, I suppose, because of the Roundup Ready technology is so quick and easy to use. But a lot of growers, while they might still be inter-row cultivating in an irrigated situation, but a lot of them aren't set up to run lay-by residuals, which are less risky than pre-planted residuals, but they're not set up to do some of those practices. As I said before, there's a fee structure, pay for what you use. Now recently there have been some incentive schemes to rotate chemistries and to get rebates from using alternative chemistries, which is good and highly commendable from Bayer and Syngenta and the like that have been, Bayer, Monsanto, Syngenta and the like to be to put these schemes together. But is it enough? That's the key thing. The farming system is now completely different, in particular in our area, but I'm sure in other valleys as well. And that is our planting times and varieties are completely different to what they were when Roundup Ready first came out. And how does that now fit into the system? We've got a wide window. We've got 4 months, 4 or 5 months to plant, 4 months, and does applying any residuals impact the rest of the system? You know, that we can now plant other crops earlier, plant cotton later. Does that impact planting into chickpeas, wheat, etc., 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 mung beans, whatever? Some growers, and again, I don't want to bash growers in this, but you know, there's a general trend that the use of lay-bys and residuals, that's old technology. You know, in the cotton industry in particular, we've always looked for new technology to be our saving grace. We've always looked for the next big thing. Bolgard 2 starts to get resistance, well, let's get Bolgard 3. Ingard had issues, let's get Ingard. I mean, they're all great products, but I think there's been an over-reliance on technology to pull us out of the proverbial. So Extend Flex, this is our new product from Bayer Monsanto that is designed to add an extra triple stack. It is actually. It's glyphosate, glufosinate, dicamba. There's research. I've got on the slide. It's coming to market, but I don't know whether that's confirmed or denied. But that's where the research is looking now, and that's going to be helping us to try and combat Roundup resistance in the cotton market. I struggle with this, and again, this is based on the US system. But Mark Congreve had a tweet on the 30th of July this year, and as it says there, reduced control of dicamba in 4 years in the Extend system in the US. And in that article, it says several cotton growers stated weed control is double to treble trying to control grass and Extend cotton in 2019. Now, if that's not alarm bells, obviously the system, as Cowboy said, it is slightly different. You know, they don't want to do as much cultivation. They don't want to disturb the soil, and that's one thing in our favour in our systems here, in particular irrigated, where inter-row cultivation is fairly common. But is that just delaying the onset of the resistance? Are we buying ourselves 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? No one knows. But it's not going to be the saviour. So as the last point there, the Extend Flex is obviously another tool in the system, but it's not the silver bullet. So if anyone thinks in the industry that Extend Flex is coming to market, Roundup resistance is a thing of the past, yeah, they've got another thing coming. So you've heard all of this basically before through the morning. So the options to reduce the reliance just comes back to diversity. It comes back to paddock and crop rotation. I mean, in our environment, in our irrigation area, I think there's a lot of people that would agree that back-to-back cotton is fairly common. And when you look at some of those figures, you know, the potential of 9 litres of Roundup on one singular crop back-to-back. Some fields have been back-to-back for 40 years. Yeah, we might not have seen anything at this point because we've got some other tools like tillage in the system in an irrigated sense. But at some point, it's going to rear its ugly head. Diversity in chemical options, obviously residuals, in-crop, fallow, as I said, residuals in there. Mechanical weed control, the good old chip hoe, as I know chipping teams are probably going to be hard to get these days, but I still think it's a very useful strategy. Sparing and sustainable use of Roundup Ready and or Extend should it come to market. And a mindset to implement a less convenient strategy. I think that's probably the biggest key, is that in the Roundup Ready system, it is a very convenient tool for us to get weed control, but I think we need to step away from that and implement something that is a little bit more challenging, that does take a lot more time, potentially, but it's going to be a hell of a lot more sustainable in the long run. And to put the graph that Susan and CRDC compiled into context, this is all the registered products for weed control, admittedly some before planting, but registered products for control in cotton system. It's taken straight out of the Cotton Pest Management Guide, which again, another plug that CRDC and CCA have collaborated to produce for the industry, but mainly a CRDC publication. I think Liz has got a couple there just as examples, I think. And yet the total herbicide use is 80% one product. That's it. Any questions?
So, Residuals, friend or foe, so we'll just continue on with his talk, and I'll leave you to it, Jamie Iker again.
All right, so I hope they'll do this justice, but anyway, no one report back if not. So, so Graham was going to talk about residual herbicides in the CQ farming systems. Now, as we already know, it's a very complex situation and issue. So wanted to start off with just some pros and cons. So a list of the pros: you can get some better control of difficult weeds. It's useful both in crop and in fallows. Reduce the pressure on spraying capacity. Now that's something that is one thing that I think people can take for granted a little bit, is that if we're relying purely on knockdowns, you know, every 5 mil shower you get maybe not 5, but you know, a decent shower you get a flush of weeds, and you could reduce, you can save your spraying capacity if we utilise residuals in the system. Again, reduce the pressure on knockdown herbicides. It's just another component to the toolbox of weed control, and it's sometimes synergistic with knockdowns. The cons, and I'm sure that this might not be the full list of cons, but reduce the flexibility of in-opportunity cropping systems. Residual activity uncertain and unpredictable in CQ. A lot of the Spacko and I've spoken at length. A lot of research is actually done in southern cropping systems, and our environment being hotter, throughout the whole season, does impact or can impact some of the residual products. Lack of CQ specific recropping data. Occasional crop damage. Some years more than others. I'm sure a lot of people would have seen some flame this year. Damage. Poor efficacy on some weeds and situations. Usually require high water volumes and impacts on spraying capacity. So as Tony mentioned, there's probably ways and means to try and convince people that high water volumes are the best strategy, but it is completely, residuals are completely reliant on having that good coverage and high water volumes. And one thing that isn't on this list, but I can't remember who it was, it might have been Tony again, highlighted, is that if we've got stubble and sort of old feather top or old summer grass residues or stuff like that, getting that product to the ground, that is the most imperative thing to actually getting the best out of the product. Sometimes it's expensive, and one that's probably, I wouldn't say it's totally specific to CQ, but it is certainly a major consideration, and will be becoming a major consideration, is the risk to waterway contamination. We live on the Great Barrier Reef, and you know, it's a beautiful thing, but it's probably likely to be a bit of an issue for us if we're not careful of contaminating our waterways. So I won't run through all of this, but I'll leave this up there. But this is just a bit of a list of typical residual herbicides in the CQ system. So some of those, I'd say most of those, everyone's had experience in the room with. Things like atrazine, turbine, simazine, of course sulfuron, metsulfuron. I think they're fairly commonly used in most farming systems here. So the recent lessons with residual herbicides in the CQ farming system. So which residual should you select? And in an opportunity-based cropping system, it is always a challenge to predict or to select the right residual herbicide to match our weed and what our target is and our likely crop sequence. So it's something that other areas do, and as Cowboy alluded to earlier in his talk, was that set rotations. If we had a set rotation on a farm, it would make it a lot easier for us to utilise the right product for our situation. But it doesn't tend to be something that we use in our system up here in CQ. Use it on a per paddock basis, not a whole farm. And personally, no, it doesn't say it up there, but personally I'd be selecting the paddocks that you've got issues with. So say you've got a sweet summergrass issue or a feather top issue, select the products that match that paddock, and you don't have to lock your whole farm out of every cropping option. Just set that field or that section of the farm aside. Okay, we're going to whatever crop it is, we're going to use this residual. Recropping intervals. So typically shorter than label guidelines in CQ because of our environment. I wouldn't say that's true for every residual herbicide, but typically it is a bit shorter, but we can get caught. There's probably some, well, it's most likely less crop injury risk with time planters than discs. So you get a lot more soil movement. Throw some of that residual herbicide to the side, allow the plant free access to come up without trying to push through some residual herbicide above the seed trench. So we'll talk about flame. I'm probably not going to, again, don't feel comfortable going after Sarah with hers, but it's very good control of annual weeds, especially difficult grasses, feather top roads.